day. How often our show comes out. Lee, I know some guy named Lee. Sol, the Spanish word for son. You, the person who's not me. Shun, what you should do to people who don't listen to this podcast. Pod, another name for tank. Cast, the note that comes out last. And that brings us back to Daily Solutions.
Podcast. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hey guys.
Graham is here.
This is Ashkahn.
And I'm him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm Graham, not the Ashkahn part. Yeah.
I think they understand.
All right. And today's question is, what do I need to do differently when running a float center out of my home? Well, probably not run a 24-hour operation, unless you're just that extreme, you know.
Well, so, I mean, I'm assuming you're not talking about, like, you need to get some sort of thing to be able to run a business out of your home.
Right, so we're assuming over the radar.
Yeah, or you're just, like, running some test floats for friends and stuff like that.
And not really taking money for them.
Like, towards a path of opening in a commercial space. But just running a commercial business out of your home probably has, like, zoning questions and depends on your city and a few things like that you might want to look into.
So, assuming that all of your commercial zoning ducks are in a row, then what's different?
Well,
usually you don't build out the rooms as intensely as you would in a float tank center.
I mean, it's some extreme construction to do to your house. Like, you'd have a really weird room left in your house if you ever took that float tank out after this point.
Yeah. So, which most notably, though, means that there's not as much salt and waterproofing around your own house as there would be in a float tank center.
Which is kind of dangerous. Like, this
scary.
It's
scary
a little
is a
scary.
word that I would use to describe it.
So, you know, you're vulnerable to that sort of salt and water damage, and you have to be careful about what you're actually doing. And there's certain things you can do to minimize the risk as much as possible. You know, it's probably easy to put some layer of something on the ground that would do some amount of waterproofing without going too extreme. It's probably, you want to think about where the closest shower is. You know, you probably don't want someone having to walk all the way across your house to a shower. Like, putting it in the room closest to a bathroom is going to help you out a lot.
And in general, I guess, moving it into portions of your house that are maybe less nice than other ones, right? Like, if you have a choice between, like, hardwood maple floors and an unfinished basement.
Yeah.
You know, maybe throw your float tank down in the
unfinished
maybe
not
basement.
On the second story. You know, and some of it just comes with how you talk to people when they come into float. You know, one of the nice things about having a float tank in your house is you probably only have one float tank and so, like, one person coming in at a time. It's just kind of a lot more manageable than a commercial float center. So you really have the chance with each person to come through to say, hey, you know, once you hop out of your float, stand here on this little, like, drying stand thing I put right in front of the float tank.
Yeah, like a float tray. It's really common, too, actually.
Yeah.
Even if you order, like, home tanks from a manufacturer, oftentimes they have a little tray you step out in to kind of catch the salt water, because they realize you're not just going to have drains everywhere and perfectly laminate floors or anything, right?
And so, you know, step out there and do a really good job drying yourself off, put on this robe, like, you know, do that before you walk away. You can tell them that otherwise the salt kind of gets everywhere and can damage the place. Like, you just have a much more one-on-one interaction with someone to try to encourage them to not spread salt and water all over the place. And I think they'll probably understand. They're in the house. Like, it's obvious that it's not like a giant waterproof thing like maybe a commercial float center would have.
Like, running a commercial float center, sometimes I feel like people want to get every last dollar that they spent on their float. And that, like, to them, that means getting out of the tank and shaking off like a shaggy dog and just getting
Splashing.
water everywhere, you know, using every possible thing they can in the basket. And, like, there's almost a sense when you're in a place of business that you get to, like, just not worry about that kind of stuff, you know? So, yeah, stressing that, and again, it just kind of naturally happens that when people are in your home, they understand and they'll take better care of it than they would in a totally commercial space.
So that's probably the biggest one. Like, it's a concern, and there are ways to go about dealing with it without spending the kind of construction money that you would in a commercial, like, retail shop sort of float center. And then there's some obvious ones, like, you want it to be quiet. So, you know, find the quietest room in your house. Like, this is probably going to be hard to do if you live in an apartment building or near a busy road or any of that sort of stuff. You're gonna have to black out the windows to not allow any light to get in.
That said, my first float was in an apartment building.
Yeah, mine too. Most float tanks don't come totally light-proof, although the kind of more home-style float tanks do tend to do a better job at light-proofing than the other ones. So depending on what tank you purchase, it might be more or less of a concern to completely and perfectly make the room the float tank is in pitch black. You're gonna have to do some laundry. Like you're probably gonna have to do a lot more laundry than you're used to doing for the amount of towels that people are using. So you'll get used to that.
Yep, and you'll just have to keep a really close eye on things. I mean, the nice thing about this is I know people who have had float tanks in their apartments for 15 to 20 years, and it's a carpeted apartment, and there's no damage.
Right.
Like it's totally possible to maintain a float tank in your private residence without completely destroying your house. And I know float tanks that have been in people's houses that have sprung leaks and done a lot of damage. So there's and that's not really different than a commercial center, except for the fact that
it's your house.
It's your house. I was going to say, and again, people are a little more cautious and tend to take it a little easier on your house than they maybe do on a commercial center.
I think there's benefits too to having a float center kind of in your house, and I think a lot of it just comes from the fact that you can offer a really like nice, personalized, individual experience for people coming to float.
Yeah,
like you're there, you're giving them all your attention. You can do cool things. Have snacks for them afterwards, have stuff like that. That's a lot easier to do for one person than when you're floating 60 people a day or something like that. Have juice, have a chance to really sit down and just chat with them afterwards for whatever, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. Like it's just a really kind of much more casual, nice, like person-to-person experience than it is really possible to run that easily. You got to work a lot harder in a commercial float center to provide that same sort of experience.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of money trying to get our lobby to kind of feel like a nice living room, you know, and if it's in your house, you just have a living room. So like mission accomplished.
And it's probably a little bit more peaceful. It's out in the neighborhood. Like there's kind of a lot that
generally less noise concerns too. Yeah. I mean, like less, the float itself might be noisier because you've done less soundproofing on your house than you would in a center, but you usually have way less big trucks, less kind of noise coming in than you'd have in a commercial center. So it's a little easier to just kind of maintain in that sense. It's like everything kind of balances out. Like you're not going to be able to make a ton of money running it, right? Like in no way is running one tank out of your house going to make you wealthy or anything like that. But getting to pull in a little ancillary income and provide floating if you're doing another job or something like that, or just if you're trying to get used to float tanks and build up to having a commercial center, this can also be a really nice.
Or if you just want a float tank in your house and this is how you're justifying it.
Yeah, as like funding some of the maintenance and chemicals and cleaning with the people coming through, right? And that's kind of how you're able to maintain your own private float tank that you get to float in 5 times a day or, whatever moderate amount of floating you decide to do.
Yeah, but be careful about that. I guess be careful about humidity is another one that you should consider when you're putting this float tank into a place. Like you probably want to make sure there's some amount of ventilation or something happening so that you're not slowly destroying the room that it's in with humidity.
Yeah, and again, other than the fact that they're totally different business models, there's actually not a ton concern-wise that's different. It's just a much lower scale, right? You're still worried about soundproofing, just not as much. You're still worried about making sure water and salt don't destroy your building, but you're probably going to use less actual protection and rely more on people's conscientiousness to protect your floors. And again, that little tray you set out in front. Your showers aren't going to be directly connected to the float tank, but you'll probably have some kind of walkway going out there. So it's all the same things. Again, just much, much tinier concerns than in a full-blown float center.
And you get to give some people some really crazy stories. People are going to get to leave and tell their friends they went to some random person's house and hopped inside of a sensory deprivation tank.
And they just got out and had the best orange juice in the world.
Yeah. So that's fun. You get to contribute that to the world.
And if you have any more questions to shoot along our way, go to floattanksolutions.com/podcast.
We will talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.